Hello, hello, welcome, please, come in. We're diving back into the Souls games again starting this week, and this time we'll be doing runs where I must always be in a heavy equip load, or the closest equivalent since the games don't always define tiers of equip load in the stats screen. But it's basically fat rolling, we're talking about fat rolling, where your normally pretty quick rolls turns very slow and very bad. But who will be journeying for this series? Strunk, this beefy lady. My limited research suggests the internet really loves beefy ladies, and who am I to argue? I also make her skin green because I had half-orcs on the brain for reasons that are not relevant. Both Knight and Temple Knight start with heavy enough equipment to be in heavy equip load, but I'm going to go with Temple Knight because having some free extra healing is always nice. I think I will do the tutorial section because I need to get a feel for how the character handles in this game when in heavy load. I'm normally a roll around real fast kind of person, and I think I'm going to struggle here. Honestly, more than I probably should. Also, did you know that you can't actually die in the tutorial prior to the Vanguard Demon? I did not know that, but the Vanguard is not a fight I'm going to win. Not at this roll speed. Into the Nexus and immediately out into Boletaria. I'm going to want the shield most of the time for survivability, but two-handing the Halberd does cover a pretty good area. I do immediately take a lot more hits than normal. I really need to get used to the slow roll. I feel like my brain is just telling me not to roll at all, and even a fat roll is still a dodge roll. And there's my first death, because I'm so used to just running through these early areas, dodging attacks. Gonna need to be better about that. And time for another death, because, yeah, I'm really used to just running, and I really need to play a bit more carefully. Because, honestly, I don't think that armor and shields are very good in this game. It's still early, so I could be wrong, but yeah. And it's first boss time, which goes as well as ever. Phalanx is already a pretty slow boss, and its weakness to fire means it takes huge damage from fire bombs and pine resin. These options do not scale super well though, so I'm not expecting these to carry me much further. Time for some leveling, and my first target is Strength. If I'm going to be standing my ground against foes, I'd like to be able to hit back as hard as possible. And I die to Fire Breath. I really need to learn that the items on the bridge are both not good and not available. Back to 2-1, I suppose I could go to other worlds, but I still think the Tower Knight is going to be the next best boss. And I can pick up a free catalyst for some sorcery buffs later on. Not sure how I feel about this bastard sword. Ooh, the merchant sells a claymore? I will be back for that once I get some more souls. Okay, Tower Knight time. Let's see what this train wreck looks like. First task is to take out the archers, which I can one-shot with a heavy attack, which is nice. Then the boss itself, which is a bit of a problem. It loves to use its big slam attack to hit the area around itself, and my bad rolls and slow attacks make the slams difficult to dodge. And because it likes to jump backwards to disrupt me, the first stage of the fight takes a lot longer than I'd hoped. But once I knock it down once, it's pretty easy to knock it down again and get in a good sequence of pine resin-infused attacks. Back to the Dregling to pick up the Claymore, because if I'm going to be forced to be a heavy equip burden, might as well have the biggest, chunkiest weapon I can find. And yes, I will regret this later. Spoilers. Time to level, and I boost up Intelligence. Just like other runs, the secret to my success here is going to be magic. Next up, it's into 2-1, the Smithing Grounds, because I want the smithing items here so I can buff up my sword as quickly as possible. My sword attacks are really doing no damage to these miners. I could fix this by just going and buying a better weapon to fight them with, but how about I don't do that and instead choose to suffer? Nah, I'm gonna switch to this convenient pickaxe the devs left for me. And the first shortcut is unlocked, so I can upgrade my claymore all the way up to +1. Hooray! The rest of the area isn't too interesting, just some salamanders, then some wolves. Wait, what are you doing down here? I am a bit concerned about this fat official. I'm not dealing a ton of damage, and not staggering him at all. Combined with my slowest attack speed, I'm a little concerned about what fighting other beefy enemies is going to look like. Oh well, I guess that's a later problem. Now a problem is the armor spider, and nothing too interesting here. Its cross-slash attack is ineffective against shields, and while it can web me up, the attack is so telegraphed, even I can dodge it. And its fire vomit attack just delays the fight, so I have to run back and forth through the arena. And now I have the Steel Shield, so a bulkier shield, and Enchant Weapon for some added damage to my attacks. Okay, back into World 2-2, and it's time to take the drop shortcut to the Flame Lurker. I don't actually think this is going to go well, but I do want to get a baseline on this fight so I can see how far I need to go before this fight is doable. And I died twice to random enemies on the way, so into the fight! And the fight is very quick. I mean, I didn't win, not even close. Let's dip and try something a little less stupid. World 4-1, which goes differently, but also bad. My shield has 100% physical block, but even basic enemies can tear through my stamina bar. While my attacks back are pretty good, they are also quite slow. This makes it really difficult to get hits in without taking damage in exchange. And I'm not super convinced armor defense does anything, because these hits are still taking a lot of my HP. I'll be honest, I wasn't really expecting these runs to be that difficult, but I am actually struggling a bit. Part of it is that I am used to low equip load, late rolling all over the place, but the other is the trade-off of slower rolls for higher defenses does not appear to be worth it, at least not in Demon Souls. Oh, good lord, these stupid skeletons. I really miss being able to dodge attacks. Okay, time to just run for it. No, no, no. Okay, and we're through. Ooh, Regenerator Ring. The healing is slow, but it might actually be useful. And finally, the easy part, the boss. Well, I don't know for sure that my shield will not block the big sword. I'm just going to assume my shield will not block the big sword. This fight doesn't even really need rolling, so it's pretty normal. And using those souls, I can upgrade my claymore to +3 and buy protection to further buff my defense. Time to take this chaotic progress into 3-1. This area is all tight corridors and mind flayers. The tight corridors are fine for the most part, but the mind flayers are not. Their paralysis beam ignores shields, and their soul ray is still very effective. And can you please stop stabbing me with poison? And I reach my first big obstacle, not actually knowing where to go. Normally I just cross this bridge, giant crossbow be darned, because you can actually dodge right through the attacks with the proper timing. I'm not sure if that's impossible while fat rolling, but it is at least considerably trickier. And that means I have to take the intended route through this area, which I don't actually know that well. So, cue a decent chunk of time just running around trying to remember where I should be. It doesn't take too long because there isn't actually that much left of this area, but it's not a short period of time. Kill this little jerk and grab the key I'll need later. Fool's Idol, a usually pretty easy fight that it turns out is a bit tricky here. The idol summons duplicates that shoot spells at you as you run around trying to dodge them, avoid the trap tiles, and attack the real idol. And that is a little more difficult when your roll is shorter distance, takes longer, and has fewer invincibility frames. It also doesn't help that I decided chunky weapons were my goal, because this claymore has chunky attack speed, but not really chunky damage. I mean, it's not bad by any stretch, but it's sure not great. Okay, let's take a break and kill some reapers. Wait, this guy sells an item that boosts magic resistance? Really wish I'd noticed that during recording, and not now. Too late to be useful to me. Anyway, I'm really just killing these reapers to get some souls. I'm a bit less durable than I'd like. And next is to World 2-2 proper. I'm still not nearly strong enough to take out Flame Lurker, but there is a bunch of this area to explore and get smithing materials to upgrade my weapons. I always forget how tedious upgrading weapons is in this game. So glad that improved starting with DS1. And all that gets my claymore up to +7, so that should be a good boost to my damage. Time to give the Flame Lurker another try. And it goes basically the same. This boss is already probably the hardest in the game, and bad rolls combined with my shield's very limited usefulness means this fight is going to be a later problem. How about the idol? And yeah, the damage buff is enough to do it. And while enchant weapons magic damage isn't the most useful here, it is still a bonus. So that's actually a boss down. I think it's time for the Valley of Defilement, because I really don't want to do any of the other areas yet. And this world isn't too bad. Because of the many falls and tight walkways, rolling can already be pretty risky, so just having a big shield and heavy armor is sometimes the way to go. And it's already Leechmonger time. Start by carefully dropping down, and then, oof, that's a lot of damage. My shield appears to be completely ineffective against the Leechmonger, which is a bit of a bummer, but it is definitely vulnerable to pine resin boosted claymore attacks. And that's the first boss in this world completed, and that was actually a lot easier than normal. And it's about this time I remember to go back to recruit Sage Frake. He will let me exchange boss souls for some nice spells. For now I pick up Warding, which I don't think I ever actually use. Ever. I may be stupid. Okay, back to World 4-2, this time to actually make progress. The Reaper here is normally not a huge threat, but my attacks being so slow actually means I die here. A few times. And then we get to one of my least favorite sections, the skeleton balcony, which sucks. Let's try actually equipping a range spell. That does help a bit, but honestly having to deal with the skeleton slowly while getting shot at is super rough. It's becoming increasingly obvious to me that I may be over-relying on just running through areas in these runs, because a mother is quite bad at these levels. And this stupid Reaper is really annoying. And yeah, I could go around, but I'm not going to. Okay, looks like I missed the door there. Twice. Don't worry, I'll get to the boss eventually, really, I swear. Okay, finally. Through this stupid level, and it's boss time. This boss can't tell where you are if you are wearing the thief ring, so it's fairly easy to just walk in, attack, back off, and then just repeat until the boss is dead. It is a bit scarier though, as I'd usually recommend rolling out of his area in case he decides to unleash a bunch of attacks, but this fight is honestly more tedious than threatening. That boss dead, I can grab some levels in intelligence and head back to World 4 for the final boss. The Storm Ruler makes killing the Storm Birds and the Storm King kind of a joke. This is definitely a fight that is very much unaffected by the rule set, so it proceeds as normal and is easy. More levels, this time to grab some more Vigor, Intelligence, and Endurance, and it's probably not smart, but let's give the Flame Lurker another try. Okay, you know what, this isn't too bad. With the levels I've gotten, the damage boost from Enchant Weapon, my damage isn't actually too bad. And actually getting attacks is still a bit tricky, with Flame Lurker's attacks bypassing shields half the time, but I can tank more damage than before. It actually only took one more try here, so that's a very nice improvement. That was definitely one of the bosses I was more worried about dealing with. Not the only boss, though. Alright, time for the stupid Dragon God. I hate this fight, as I've often said. Like, I get what they were going for, but this is just not great. The only good thing is I'm already very much spec'd for chunky weapons, so breaking the pillars is a one-attack kind of deal. So, this very annoying fight ends with less difficulty than it could have. Okay, let's see about completing World 3. This level isn't too exciting by itself, other than the Mind Flayers completely ignoring my big shield. All other enemies deal only pure physical damage, making most of this area pretty boring to get through. I do briefly take the time to free Lautrec from his cell and kill him, because his armor is really good drip. Wait, why is his cell an elevator? And how is he stuck in it if the door just opens? Oh well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Into the muck! And then into the next boss that's gonna be a pain, the Man-Eaters. This fight isn't too bad initially when there are only one, but about halfway through, another Man-Eater shows up. And while it's less durable, it's no less difficult to deal with. And that's first attempt down the drain. Let's give this another try. I do try attacking with Firebolt, but that's not a lot of damage, though admittedly neither is my regular attack. Am I wrong to think that big chunky weapons should deal more damage in this game? Am I doing something wrong, or is that just how Demon Souls works? Fortunately, the fight does go better, which is to say this extended game of run around the central brazier until the Man-Eater falls down ends well. And once there's only one Man-Eater left, the rest of the fight is way easier. It's really only the middle half of this fight that is actually challenging. Then the final area boss, this long spiral staircase. I mean, the real boss is the old monk that inhabits a red phantom, but I think I can count the number of deaths I've had against this staircase on 2 hands, and I'm fairly confident I can count my old monk deaths on 0. Because the old monk boss that spawns when you are offline, which I typically am while recording, is not particularly challenging. And my heavy armor does a lot to mitigate what hits do actually make it through. That's another world completed. Alright, up next is deeper into World 5, the Valley of Defilement. And I'm pretty confident in saying this is actually the worst area in Demon Souls. You can try to run through a decent chunk of the area, but it's really risky as it's very easy to get surrounded. Sadly, slow and steady is probably the way to go. Which is lame, I know, but what can you do? I don't want to have to run through the same section of the map 6 times. Sir, do you need help? Well, that's the best help I can offer, because I obviously don't want to deal with you later. I do hate how far out of the way you have to go to unlock the shortcut in this area. And it's boss time! Dirty Colossus doesn't hit too hard, but it can infest your character with bees. I could run to the fires around the room to clear them, but I just don't want to. Instead, it's time for weapon buffing and just attacking. The fight is otherwise quite simple. And that means it's time for another boss! Maiden Estrella and her boy toy. One downside about the steel shield is no parry, which is unfortunate because that is the absolute fastest way to finish this fight. I could go back and get a parry shield, but instead we're just gonna push on through. Which takes a while, because this guy has a lot of defense and health. But honestly not that long. Then it's over to chat with Maiden Estrella, who just gives up. That's another world down, so all that's left is World 1, which is more of the same. I'd love to say anything interesting about this section of the map, but there really isn't anything. Even at this weight level, it's pretty easy to run past this last section and get into the next fight, Penetrator, which is normally a pretty easy boss. I say normally because this is not a normal run. First problem is the Penetrator has a grab attack, in which he penetrates your torso with his sword, which is not ideal. But even his regular attacks can punch through my entire stamina bar and then some. And while he isn't that fast of a boss, he kind of is when I'm moving this slow. Between my bad roll speed and chunky weapon, I actually am not sure there is a safe punish window at any point in his moveset. Occasionally I get lucky when he follows up a slow recovery attack with a slow startup attack. This lets me deal damage without taking any in return, but that is not the majority of the time. And blocking his attacks is just pointless, as the ability to take away all my stamina means I can't actually do any follow-up attacks. Penetrator is difficult. Don't think I've ever had that happen. It's just my normal method of play is either spellcasting or fast attacks. Time to try for a new method. I've been putting points into magic to boost my enchant weapon bonus, but why not use that magic to be a little stinker? And by that I mean, throw firebolts. It doesn't make the fight free. Penetrator is pretty aggressive, so keeping my distance is a bit tough. And Penetrator also has some fun input reading on his dodges, so I need to be sure to time my spellcasting so it goes off mid-attack. But it is much easier than fighting this boss in melee. Alright, one section of map to go, one last boss to defeat, but first let's trade in a boss soul for light weapon. And that means I only have one zone and one boss left. But first is the real hardest boss sequence. 3 random red NPCs. Because fighting these 3 at once is actually quite difficult. Though the heavy armor, chunky weapon, and good weapon buff does help with damage a lot. I mean, I still die several times, but it's only several times, which is an improvement. And much as I'd love to equip the big shield I get here, I don't have the strength for it, and probably not the endurance either. Oh well, steel shield will have to be good enough. The final area is otherwise quite boring, and it's time for the final boss, Alant. Pay no attention to me wielding the big shield I don't have the stats for and dying immediately. I regret to inform you, that didn't happen. Back into the fight with the same shield, which is just as effective, and yeah, that's not great. Even with light weapon, my damage is pretty bad, and he has a grab move that deals decent damage, and, more importantly, drains my soul levels, which is not a thing in any other FromSoft game, and for good reason. This is not ideal. The final bosses in FromSoft games are usually a bit underwhelming, and Alant usually is the exact same way, except his ability to zoom around the arena and hit like a truck through my shield is really bad actually. I have a frankly ludicrous number of healing items, but I also don't really have any great opportunities to attack. So my temptation is to just throw myself recklessly at the final boss until I win, but that's how I get tilted, waste a bunch of time, and get really annoyed. So instead, time to do some prep work. My Claymore is only a +7 out of +10, mostly because getting the upgrade materials to advance further is kind of tedious in this game. But that extra bonus may be all I need. I buy the Evacuate Miracle, which lets me warp back to the Nexus and then start making some trips to this area of World 2, which has all the crystal lizards in the world. I'm looking for a good variety of Hearthstone materials, but it takes, frankly, way longer than it should. Doing a good bit of material grinding gets my Claymore level up to +10. Back into the game, and I die to a random red-eyed phantom. Alright game, you play that way. Well, joke's on you, because I know how to bypass everything. Into the elevator, I'm very much done dying to nonsense in this easy game and an easy challenge. And this fight against Alant is really where I embrace the slow roll. Fat rolling doesn't make your rolls useless, it just means you need to be more precise. You don't have the same space as you have with a light roll, but you can still dodge things. And Alant can cast his big explosion as much as he wants. Though, actually, can you stop? Maybe stop exploding. Thank you, sir. I have magic sword and I finally know how to roll properly. So get Ah, much better. Time to dive down the Nexus to face the old one. Big kind of tree demon. In here is real Lant, who isn't a real fight, even with heavy armor. I could kill the maiden in black, but I'm actually just gonna bail. I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm done. Goodbye, demon souls. Your shields suck. Your chunky weapons are disappointing. Goodbye. Alright, so that is Demon Souls completed while being constantly in heavy equip load. Going into this challenge, I was unsure if this would actually be interesting or challenging, and I was both pleasantly and unpleasantly surprised that yes, there was actually a lot to talk about here. But I'll have more to say about that in the summary video out in a few weeks. I did want to shout out that I do have a Patreon, linked in the description. I spend a lot of time making these videos, so if you enjoyed the video, want to support the channel, and are financially stable enough to do so, that exists. No pressure though, this channel is free to enjoy for everyone and will remain that way. For now, if you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of this, feel free to subscribe. Hey, maybe leave a comment if you have something you'd like to say. But whatever you decide to do, have a safe trip home.